Hello everybody, my name is James McGeachie and I'm the Technical and Programme Director at the Low Carbon Vehicle Partnership. So this morning I'm going to give what I can only say is a very brief overview of policy in the 10 minutes that we've got, focusing mainly on light commercial vehicle and heavy duty vehicle sectors. So firstly, a quick introduction of LowCVP or Low Carbon Vehicle Partnership. So we're an independent non-profit partnership formed in 2003. We're part funded by the government, part funded by our members, which are around 200 in total at the moment. And really our purpose is to accelerate the transition to zero emission transport. And as you can see from the image on the left, hopefully, we work with a wide range of organisations, groups and businesses from a variety of sectors in order to do that. I've listed some of our working groups there, and perhaps unsurprisingly, we've probably focused on commercial vehicles being of most interest today. So before we delve into the policy, and it's kind of reinforcing some of the stuff that Catherine's mentioned, I thought we'd just take a look at where we are. In terms of new vehicle registrations, for light commercial vehicles over the 20-year period, it is a rising trend. It's perhaps not surprising to find it's punctuated by economic downturns. These figures here are up to 2019, so we can only keep our fingers crossed for 2020 and onwards at the moment. But nevertheless, over that period, we've seen that from a van perspective, there's been a 35% increase in registrations. Heavy duty vehicles, a little more consistent on registrations, but worth noting that the number of miles driven with those vehicles has increased quite significantly. And then overall, what does that mean? Well, in terms of domestic transport emissions, certainly from 2018, 16% is light commercial and 17% in heavy duty. So facts I'm sure we all knew, but perhaps a reminder on the sustainable aspects. And then in terms of where we are right now, so in the middle of COVID, we've taken a quick look at the transport stats from the DFT on what the last few months have looked like. And for those there, apologies if this is a little difficult to see, but essentially the green line is HGV, the yellow line are vans, and the blue line are cars. And what we can see there is that cars essentially have yet to return to where they were perhaps in February's usage level. Commercial vehicles have been more robust in some ways. Vans took a hit at each lockdown, HGVs have gradually climbed, but overall, the commercial vehicle sector in terms of vehicles on the road, miles travel, has essentially pretty much restored itself to where it was pre-COVID. So very much reflecting on perhaps the change in what is parcel delivery on demand, etc., and a bigger increase on home deliveries. Policy-wise, I've very roughly split this into national and local, and again, Catherine's mentioned some of these, but at the high level, obviously the UK was amongst the first to make it a legal imperative to reach net zero by 2050. We do also have a commitment to at least match, if not better, European CO2 regulations post-Brexit. There, I've said it, we managed to get a few minutes in. Obviously, as Catherine's gone into on detail as well, phase out of new combustion engine van sales in 2030. There is also the consultation to phase out combustion engine HGV sales as well, with the date to be determined. We do have the plug-in van grant in terms of tools in the box and what's termed the extension to the plug-in van grant for heavy-duty vehicles, but we'll touch on that a little later. There is the licence derogation for alternative fueled vehicles, which is really a recognition that at the moment, certainly, the likes of hybrids or EV variants tend to carry a weight penalty. So it's some allowance to account for that. And then also one I thought we'd bring out, and it actually links back to earlier comments in terms of clarity for HGV-based solutions. In the 10-point planning there was also the mention of the £20 million for freight trials in 2021, so next year. And some of that really is targeted at determining what those solutions might look like. HGVs are perhaps a little further behind, being more difficult, frankly, to decarbonise. So that's welcome too. In terms of local government, a lot of local authorities are really pushing the agenda. So they're independently setting their own targets, some as aggressively as 2025 or certainly 2030 for net zero, Inevitably, they have a sustainable transport agenda in order to achieve that. And those initial focuses are around local authority vehicle fleets, and also ensuring there's a sustainability criteria within any contracts that go out to tender. In terms of zones, there are some, to say the least. So we have the ultra-low emission zone through TfL. Obviously, that's going to expand next year out to the North and South Circular. And we have the clean air zones that Catherine's mentioned as well for Bath and Birmingham. Worth noting that where there are clean air zones, it's likely that zero emission zones will follow as well. And certainly Oxford for this moment is out for consultation, but we can see that as an area that will grow and become more popular potentially as the years go on. In terms of COVID, there are obviously some announcements that are very specific associated with that. £250 million emergency active travel fund is one I've deliberately picked on here, and mainly in the context again of perhaps urban and last mile deliveries. Reallocation of road space is quite a key criteria. Now in this instance it's focused on active travel, which we've seen pop-up bike lanes, wider pavements, etc. But that does lay some challenges potentially regarding how urban delivery takes place, and also the amount of road space available for delivery vehicles. So a quick run through, as I've said. I thought we'd have a look at some opportunities to explore. I'm going to apologise at this point because again this is a little scattergun and a bit light on detail, but it's based on the time we've got today, and also it's really here to trigger thoughts and ideas. So the first one will be another apology. Trying to find an image for vehicle excise duty. The only thing I could come up with was the good old tax disc. But here it's worth noting that for, unlike passenger cars, vans and heavy duty vehicles, the vehicle excise duty is not currently linked to CO2 emissions. So there's an aspect of polluter pays principle in there potentially. And it's also could be viewed as an additional lever to supplement running cost savings that are there as potential for low emission, zero emission vehicles. Obviously there are financial penalties that we've already mentioned around ULEZ and CAS entry. And then the corporate sustainability, corporate social responsibility agenda that many companies are now looking to promote. So there's one idea. On the back of that, perhaps around low emission trucks. So this is at the heavier end. So we have an ultra low emission vehicle definition, which applies to cars and vans, but at the moment there isn't anything there for trucks. And that can create challenges. So at the moment, the larger vehicles are unlikely to achieve the 50% CO2 saving that's required for the current plug-in grant qualification, but more on that in a moment. And we kind of see having a bit of a transitional step for the industry, so that, okay, HGVs in particular are difficult to decarbonise, certainly to turn to zero emissions, for example. So, but let's not wait for perfect, let's do something in the interim, and an ultra low emission vehicle could offer. And then it gives incentives for the manufacturers and the operators alike to purchase and engage with these vehicles. And indeed, as an example, the ultra low emission bus scheme, ULEB, has proven particularly successful in that area, and its predecessor, the low emission bus scheme. So they're responsible for 1,600 low emission and ultra low emission buses coming onto the roads to this day. Onto the plug-in grant. It has been extended, although obviously that's out to 22-23, and it would be interesting to see if it's further extended beyond that. A couple of things on the grant itself. It is an extension to the plug-in van grant for the heavy-duty vehicles, which essentially means it's effectively capped at £8,000 per vehicle, which makes for anything over 3.5 tonnes and certainly up to HGVs, that can be a difficult business case to move to the zero emission or zero emission capable vehicles. And then at the other end, going the other extreme, so there aren't currently any grants available for L6 and L7 category vehicles. So these are the quad recycle type vehicles that you see on the left, which we can see with the ICE phase out, that perhaps there'll be some movement of people into those vehicles. And what we wouldn't want to see, I think collectively, is that be a movement into vehicles that are then got high polluting powertrains associated with them. And there's also an argument that perhaps urban deliveries don't require the range and top speed of a van. On the flip side, these types of vehicles are perhaps better weather protection and greater payload than bike-based. They're simpler to electrify and quicker to charge, and potentially offer a great opportunity for UK manufacturing. And then my final one is more not an opportunity to explore, more an observation, I think. And it's actually an observation from my window. One of the things from working at home is I tend to see a lot more of the traffic than I did before. And it struck me that not all last mile deliveries are necessarily commercial vehicles. This particular vehicle delivers quite often to my next door neighbours. And as you can see, it's not a van, it's not a commercial vehicle of type, and it is working for a well-known parcel delivery company. And the interesting aspect to note is that the vehicle that you see, its tailpipe emissions, or CO2, figures are at least as good at, if not worse, than an equivalent transit van. So there's definite scope to work on policies, for sure. We have some. We probably need to develop some more, I would suggest. And also there's an element perhaps about addressing those other areas that are involved in parcel delivery. And that's a whistle stop for me.